Well, first of all, listen, it's interesting about all these young guys today. They never call on us and say, hey, thanks for the kind word and telling me how great a player I am. But when they play like crap and we call them out, we don't know what we're talking about. Listen, I'm easy to find.
What is going on, ladies and gentlemen? It is your host, Nathan Snell of Big Nate Sports Talk Podcast. I hope you're all doing well, having a safe day. Hope everyone's staying safe, excuse me. Hope you had a terrific Tuesday. This is episode 11, season 10 of the podcast. And this episode, we're talking about why the Baltimore Orioles have been successful, why I feel as though they've been successful this year. But before we get into that, there's a few things I'd like to say up front. The predictions for the 53-man roster went up earlier today, this afternoon. This video will be posted and will go live tomorrow, Wednesday, of course. Same time, about noon, 1 o'clock. So be tuned in for that. I got another video that talks about the Maryland Terrapins and my predictions of what they look like this season. Brendan Potts will be back on the podcast where we are doing a couple things. We are, after game 2, we're just checking in, seeing what we like from both series. And also, too, the WNBA awards were released early. The WNBA All Defensive Teams awards were released, and there was a lot of emotions on social media today. And we're going to talk about that in that episode. But thank you for the support you've given me and this YouTube channel, especially also on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify. I appreciate the support you've been giving me in this channel. I do appreciate it, ladies and gentlemen. But let's get into it. You know, I can't tell you how, as being an Oriole fan, it has been a journey. The last taste of true success I remember was 1997. Maybe it was 96. Davey Johnson was the manager. You know, we had guys like Roberto Alomar, Cal Ripken Jr., and we all know the Jeffrey Myers fan interference catch with Tony Tarasco on the right field, and then call that fan interference. And that began the transition of a team that, for some unknown reason, just had an owner that just didn't want to continue to pay money. I know we paid Albert Bell a lump sum of money. I know he was dealing with some injuries. Kyle Ricker retired in 2001. And it was an interesting transition because I remember some of those guys. Jay Gibbons, Brian Roberts, I think was a rookie, like 2002. Melvin Mora, Jerry Hairston Jr. I think we still had David Segui at one point. I think we had Rodrigo Lopez, Sidney Ponson. As the years progressed, I mean, we really just weren't the same team from the from the 90s, mid-90s. We just weren't the same team. There was no true identity. Some of the guys that we've had, I thought, like getting Miguel Tejada was a good pickup. There was one year, I say this all the time. It's still as a kid, you like, especially like if you've ever played MLB The Show, for example, or Madden, you always want to have the best players on your favorite team. So this one year, Peter Angelos, I think it was probably like after the 05-06 season, and he's like, we heard your frustrations as fans. This is the year we're going to be great. We're going to compete. We're going to go in on free agency. An everyday starting pitcher, catcher, closer, and a first baseman. I think also, too, an outfielder. So BJ Ryan went to Toronto. At the time, was the highest paid closer because the Blue Jays paid him to be the highest paid closer. Went after Paul Bird, failed. Johnny Damon, failed to sign him. We tried to get Paul Konerko from the White Sox, didn't happen. Who else? I think we tried to snag Kevin Millwood, didn't happen. The only two guys I believe we got were Ramon Hernandez and Corey Patterson, who were great players for us. That season, he gave fans false hope and said, "We're going. I'm. These are the guys I'm going to go after," and it didn't happen. So, also, going through different managers. I know for a few years, we had Dave Tremblay. My point is that to really sum this up, I have seen this team through its struggles. I've seen it through when it's been successful. I still remember that the night after the Orioles had defeated the Kansas City Royals, and Juan Samuel was the manager at the time, and he was an interim manager because Dave Tremblay he was fired. And it was announced, I think it was on Madsen, that we hired Buck Showalter. And I'm like, who's Buck Showalter? So I asked my dad, I said, Dad, who's Buck Showalter? He said, Buck Showalter, he's a respected manager. He coached the Diamondbacks, Yankees. And I'm like, oh, okay. I said, he's like, and I'm in my mind, I'm like, oh, he's an old school manager. I remember looking at his press conference. I said, oh, okay. Like, he's going to instill some winning. We had guys like Adam Jones, Nick Markakis, Matt Wieters. And then we got a guy by the name of Dan Duquette, GM. Started bringing in guys and kind of was starting to compete. It was right around the 2011 season. That's when I knew some magic was beginning to appear. I always go back to that last game of the year, game 162. It was a crazy year, the crazy last game. I think the Braves had to win to get into the playoffs. The Cardinals had to win to get into the playoffs. The Phillies, I think, had to win, and Boston. Now, this was the same Boston team, right? They had that super team with Adrian Gonzalez, Carl Crawford, David Ortiz. That super team on paper, that was crazy. And then there's also the same year we had traded for Mark Reynolds, because I think Brian Roberts, up until this point, may have been the only true vet at this point. I know Ty Wigginton, who was our only all-star the previous year, he went to Colorado. We got J.J. Hardy. I think we even got Cesar Torres and Julio Lugo. And we signed Derek Lee. Then we traded him to the Pittsburgh Pirates in the middle of the season. I thought that was weird. And then my favorite closer, we had got Kevin Gregg. I know I may be going on a long story here, but even that year too, we signed Vladimir Guerrero, which
relationship with your
Oh
children.
my God.
It's funny. The year before Texas, he was with the Texas Rangers. I think he hit 20. I think it was 30, might have been 29 home runs that year. And then the year he comes to us, he hit 12. 12 home runs. Was it 12? No, it was 13 home runs. I'm sorry. I'm like, where's the Vladimir Guerrero from last season? But that's besides the point. So game 162, Boston needed to win this game. It was I remember the stat they said at the time. Boston was 77-0 after the 8th inning, and we were down 1. And at the time, their closer was Jonathan Papelbon. And I remember the Robert Andino game-winning hit, and it said when we won on that network ESPN, we broke the viewership record, because I mean everybody watched the game, because the Boston Red Sox didn't make the playoffs that year. Trying to figure out, they won 90 games with that team, and I think that was the only. I think that was Terry Francona, I want to say. Yeah, he was the manager. Yep. Because I'm thinking who else was on that Boston team. Oh, Adrian Beltre was on that team. JD Drew, Jacoby Ellsbury. There's some guys on that roster. Yeah, now that I think about it, yeah, that team did not make the playoffs. But and then to see where the Orioles have gone to then from after that, I remember we won the AL East, and I it's still it's still fresh in my mind, because I had seen them win the wild card. We beat the Texas Rangers, and then we lost to New York in the divisional round. But to see us win the division, we swept the Tigers. Arguably beat the three best pitchers at the time in the game: Verlander, Scherzer, and Jordan Zimmerman. And then seeing Manny Machado, the number 3 overall pick, be a part of that building success. And then things just kind of fell apart. I thought that, in my personal opinion, I thought at the time signing Chris Davis was smart, because he was at one time the most feared hitter at the plate, because he was produced. I think one year he had 52 home runs, and I think another year he had 48. And then he got busted for using Adderall, because I know he has ADHD. And I think it was the 1 year Manny was out I think he injured his leg, didn't make the playoffs. I think it was 2015, 2016. That was the true end, when Edwin Encarnacion hit that game-winning home run in the wild card off of Bado Jimenez, who should not have been in the game. It should have been Zach Britton, damn it. I'm not letting that go. But I say all that to say this. Then you just see the demise. The year we lost 110 games, I couldn't defend it. I was just disappointed. Then I knew we were going in a different direction when we traded Manny Machado to the Dodgers. And honestly and truthfully, looking at a hindsight 2020, I think we traded them a year too late. Zach Britton to New York. Because those guys, I'd probably say only out of Dylan Tate, nobody's really cracked double-A ball in any of those trades that I know of. But after that year, Buck Showalter and Dan Duquette's contracts were not renewed. Then comes Mike Elias and Brandon Hyde. Mike Elias was responsible for the success in building the Houston Astros, because a lot of people, for the younger fans, the Houston Astros were in the National League where I remember growing up. And then there was a period when they transitioned to the American League, and they weren't good. They really struggled. I think 1 year, I think they had lost, the same amount of games that we did. But ironically, that season before Brandon Hyde and Mike Elias came in, I think we actually were closer. I think we had almost the same identical record compared to the 2003 Detroit Tigers. That Tigers team, whew, I'll leave it at that. But back to the point. So when you look at the plan, I knew that the Orioles had to go in a different direction. I knew they had to rebuild for the future. And Mike Elias did it with Houston, Carlos Correa, George Springer, Jose Altuve, getting guys like Michael Brantley, Kyle Tucker, and really building just building something. So I'm like, okay, I'm optimistic about the signing. If he built a contender in Houston, he'll damn well do it here in Baltimore. The first year was painful. I know it doesn't feel like it's been 3 years, but like the 2019 year, my patience literally. I checked out like after September. I know we finished the year 54 and 100 and 108. Like it was bad. I mean, the roster was completely brand new. I mean, you could just tell like, okay, we just got guys. They just had guys out there. Just do the best you can and compete. And then next year, COVID year, we finished 4th place. And then last year was the icing. Really was really the most painful season because that was our third straight. That was our third plus 100 loss season within the 4 years, and I think ever since we came from St. Louis, that's been that's also going back to when we were with St. Louis. I mean, like I think at one point we had 2 different times where we lost 14 games, and it was just painful. And we had the worst ERA. We had almost yielded 1,000 runs. I think it was like around 912, 911, like 912 runs. It was just bad. I think the only team that's has the most might be is it the 01 Rangers? I think. But I say all that to say this. So the reason why I believe the Baltimore Orioles have been so successful is the trust in Mike Elias. Like when you look at his plan, like I see the vision. He's building a team for the future. And we knew that this was going to be it was going to be a tough, painful rebuild. But when he did come in the organization, I mean, he didn't inherit talent like he did in Houston. Had Ryan Mountcastle, Austin Hayes, Cedric Mullins, Anthony Santander came out in the Rule 5 draft. Like, and then you get guys like Keegan Allen. When you traded Zach Britton, you got guys like Dylan Tate. And like, I think we have to give credit to Mike Elias for really developing these guys into what they are today. Because they like Cedric Mullins to have a 30 for 30 season. Ryan Mountcastle just coming on and just exceeding expectations. Keegan Allen, John Means, like all of that has to do with what Mike Elias has done. And I think also too, my next point is the culture, developing and patience. I think there needed to be a culture change, like the same way, like it's what are we trying to build? Are we trying to, what is our identity? We need time to develop, and it's patience. Yes, when you rebuild, it's not easy because you're telling the sports world and the fans that we're going to be struggling, but we need you to be patient because I'll be honest, today's fans, this isn't any sport, are not patient. They will lose their patience in a hurry. Like, I remember when we won the AL East, Camden Yards was packed to the brim. And then all of a sudden, like as the years progressed, he wasn't selling out that many crowds. And like I said, when your team's winning, everybody's in the crowd, they're cheering for you. They got the jersey on their backs. But when you're losing, you can't find some fans. But I get it. And I think also to the next point is actually signing some talent. I think that is also key. I think what you also need in a locker room is you need vets that are leaders. I look at Jordan Lyles. who's been an innings eater for us. Rudy Odor, who for unknown reasons, people have been attacking him, saying that we need to designate him for an assignment. We players are entitled to have are entitled to have a rough patch. Like just what a couple not too long ago, he was clutch in certain situations. Now all of a sudden we want him off the team, and that makes no sense to me. Like Robinson Chernos, like those are guys. Those are vets that you need in your locker room, and like when you have those guys and you have mix of energy, that really makes a big difference. And I think also to the next point is May 21st at Adley Rutschman. The day he was called up, I've always felt as though that's when we took our first. That's when we've taken the next step. We were 16-24 when we called him up. Ever since then, we've gone. Oh, we just lost. I think it's 51-38. I want to say, like, we all know Adley Rutschman's the corner is the franchise piece for this team, and I believe, if I'm still saying this right, I think he's the 10th best rookie as of right now in terms of on base percentage. And then also too, like some of the guys they've signed, like Felix Bautista, I think is probably the most underrated pitcher right now in the game. Like trading Jorge Lopez, which I got for younger prospects. I think, honestly, truthfully, I think you may have found your closer. I mean, we've now given him the nickname the Mountain. The man throws a 100-per-hour splitter and fastball sink. I mean, he can pitch the ball, and I love him as our closer. And then I think again, you look at it too when you are trying to develop your bullpen, and when I look at the bullpen, it was compared to last year was very, very trash. And the one thing that when you are rebuilding, you always want to have a good bullpen. In the last few years, Baltimore's definitely struggled with that. Now, when you look at that compared to last year and this year, I just want to pull some stats. We had an ERA of 5.7. That was 30th in Major League Baseball. As of now, I believe our ERA is still around 3.1. So that's fourth best. Terms of strikeouts, we've improved. We're now 21st. Like little things like that. Like the bullpen, it's good. It's getting the job done. Like compared to what it was last year. And when I look at it, that like last year, I think we had 6 of our 8 pitchers are no longer on this team from last year. Dylan Tate and Tyler Wells, only 2 guys left. And also too, like Keegan Allen, who I think has been better in the bullpen because I feel like he's now. I think he's now comfortable with his being in the bullpen. Dylan Tate, Felix Bautista, Brian Baker, Joey Kilbrell, Ciano Perez. Like those are the things. Like that's what you want in a bullpen, and I'm very proud of them. Now, also too, really quick. Making decisions that are tough but best for the future. So if you remember, I talked about this in a few seasons ago on the podcast where we had moved left field the wall. We moved it back. I think it was like 30 feet. I think the height of the wall went from 7 to 12. the idea was to try to cut home runs to have a more of a neutral surface, and um, definitely got some pushback. And honestly, truthfully, it's actually worked in our favor. Like I've I thought it would have been a disaster for us, but like it actually benefits us. Like I believe within the 3 years from I looked at this stat from 19 to 20 to last year, the home run rate has been cut in half. I think it was almost three three home runs per game, 3.5, let's say 3.5 home runs per game, to now under 2 home runs. Like I think it's what fly balls and line drives this year's 8.8. Like those last 3 years, it was 13.5. Those are improvements. Like we were out. I think the statistics I saw, I think we were out home run by like 642 to 485. So that's a home run every 2 games. And like they've done well with it. And I'm very impressed with it. Now, let's see what happens going forward. Now, also too painfully, Trey Mancini, who I considered the veteran of this team, painfully traded.
How do you do that? How do you do that? What the hell is going on?
I get it. It's a business decision. You have to do what's best for the team, and I think trading him to Houston's going. I said it in my reaction. Houston's was going to get a great player, and you have to make decisions that are tough. But we all know what Michael is trying to do, and that's what comes being part of when you're rebuilding a team. Nobody expected, and I'll be honest, I didn't expect the Baltimore Orioles to be this good. I mean, they're 67 and 59. We unfortunately lost tonight, 5-1 to those Cleveland Guardians, painfully, but that's okay. We'll get them. We'll get them tomorrow. I did not expect us to be this good. I mean, and just looking at the AL East really quick, I didn't expect it to be this close. I think as of today, we are 10 games back from first place. I thought New York would have ran away with the AL East, but New York is trailing them by 6.5. I think Toronto is 7.5, and Boston, I'm actually surprised. I'm going to call it the Boston Red Sox will miss the playoffs.
Guaranteed.
I'm sorry, Boston. I got great roster, but I'm disappointed with what I've seen. But we're actually 4th on the wild card teams. You have the top 3 teams will qualify, and right now it's Tampa, Seattle, and Toronto. So we're 3 games back from the wild card. It wouldn't faze me if we missed the playoffs. It would not faze me at all. Because I think this is a starting point to build off success. And that leads me to my last point is, what does the future look like? For some unknown reason, I've noticed this. I've tried to follow our minor league system too. We're struggling just a tad bit against left-handed pitching. And I think all that I think that's going to come with just looking at film, getting in the batting cage, staying out with hitting coaches, and I think it'll get better. Now, the Orioles do have players that can do well against left-handed pitching. I just think that this had to be more of a balance. You may have to find a first baseman that's good against left-handed pitching. There's going to be some decisions they're going to have to make. But I do think that going forward, Baltimore has to, in order to compete, you're going to have to take some money out the pocket. Going to have to spend some money. You because coming into this season, we had the lowest payroll, and to not have John Means, was out due to season-ending elbow injury. Like, I just did not know what this team would look like, and the fact that there's just so much potential with this team going forward for the next 3 to 5 years. I could see them being a World Series contender in about 4 seasons. That all depends on what Mike Elias does. And then also, too, I don't know what's going to happen going forward with the Angelos family, because that's also, too, kind of was a distraction a little bit as well. The both brothers it's now the older one that has now been principal owner, because Mr. Peters Angelos is not doing so well as of late, but I'm hoping he's taking it one day at a time and he's doing fine. But I talked about it. It's a messy issue right now, but I'm convinced that'll get fixed. Now, Gunnar Henderson and somebody else. I can't think of their name. They're supposed to join the team tomorrow, because September, maybe DL Hall. The DL Hall? I believe it is. The rosters expand for the month of September, so they're going to get called up early, which I love that, because they've been balling really well. And I look at this year. I look at the talent they've also had. Kyle Stowers, Jordan Westberg. Like, there's a lot of talent and potential for on this team for years to come. Grayson Rodriguez, he had that lat injury, and at some point we would have seen him up here, but that's okay. I know he had a good bullpen session. I heard the results were good, so painfully, I'm still just a little mad that we did not sign Carlos Correa, but that's okay. But I don't think we need that. Now, look at the payroll, okay? This year, we came in under $44 million. That's a low payroll. And then last year, we were 27th. 2020, we were 29th. And I believe we were also 27th in 2019. And as according, I remember the statistic, I'm reading this, I think since 2017, I think it's like under $165 million. That was the payroll that we had. And you really got to go out there and get some talent. I'm not saying go out here and just splurge, but balance it out. Like, look at what the Cubs, I use when the Cubs won the World Series, getting John Lester, San Diego getting Manny Machado. Then Kansas City Royals, they're another example. You look at Texas, even though I was signing Corey Seager and Marcus Semien. What's another example? Mookie Betts, is another example. Nolan Arenado. Like, there's teams are spending money to do whatever it takes to compete for a championship. Now, our farm system, which is arguably the number one farm system in the league, and there's going to be continued development. And what I like about it is that they're all team controlled contracts. So when you look at it, you don't have to worry about, I got to pay this person this kind of money or that kind of money. So, like, for example, after this year, Jordan Lyles, I think he has an $11 million club option and a $1 million buyout. And I think John Means is signed, I think it's like around $3 million. So after this year, there's no other players on the contract. So we'll see what this roster looks like going forward. But the main focus is that I'm really proud to really be an Oriole fan, and there's a lot to be happy with the talent that you're seeing, and we credit that at Mike Elias, but also too I got to give Brandon High some love. To be in that kind of position when you take over a team that's clearly in rebuilding mode, you're kind of the odd man, the lame duck. Like you're just a placeholder until we find this person. I've been I hate that for coach, especially guys that are first getting into the managerial position. I don't like that at all because that kind of sets them up to fail. The only issue that I do have is that with Mike is I think he took a little too long to just cut it off with Chris Davis, even though painfully we have to pay him. I think it's $17 million because he retired. And I'll be honest, I had some hope for Chris Davis. I really did. $161 million experiment, it failed. I'm sorry to say that. I know people want to say it happens, but now I wouldn't expect at 2 good seasons in like this. Oof. But I'm going to say it right here. The Baltimore Orioles will be in the top 3 wild card position for this season.
Guaranteed.
The Baltimore Orioles will finish with 90. No, let me back up. They'll finish with 89 wins.
Guaranteed.
So I'm excited. I'm optimistic for the future. I'm so ecstatic to watch this team. Even though they've had some good games, had some bad games, but for the most part, they're just playing baseball, man. And I love it. And some of the moves that I'm seeing, like Colton, like our first round pick 2 years ago, last year, Colton Colzer, he's going up to AAA. Like Gunnar Henderson's going to be called up to the big league roster. Like there's so much hype around this team, and you could just feel it. You can really feel it, man. And I'm really proud to say that I'm an Oriole fan. So that's going to conclude the episode, ladies and gentlemen. I do apologize if I was so long-winded. I just had to get off my chest. I felt really good. I wanted to really make a video talk about it. Be tuned in for future episodes. Please like, comment, subscribe. I will catch you guys on the flip side. Have a good night. Stay up.
Well, first of all, listen, it's interesting about all these young guys today. They never call on us and say, hey, thanks for the kind word and telling me how great a player I am. But when they play like crap and we call them out, we don't know what we're talking about. Listen, I'm easy to find. But I get sick of these guys complaining. These young guys, they never call us and say, when a coach is wrong, I'm going to call him out. But when players are wrong, I'm going to call them out. Thanks for the kind words. But listen, I'm going to criticize guys that they deserve it. And listen, they can kiss my ass if they don't like it.
Thank you for tuning in to Big Nate Sports Talk. If you enjoyed that episode and you want to see more content, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Bring your sports game on Big Nate Sports Talk.